Let's hold on
I
here.
sure hope so.
It said our stream had shut down suddenly for no reason, and I
That's
want
been
to know
happening to me on
why.
other platforms too. So, yikes.
Yes, let's hold out just for a second. All this will just be a pre-stream, just a few minutes of us chatting at y'all real quick before we sure the streams be stable.
You did
If
kind
you
of go full Cybertron for a second, by the way.
Oh, that would not be great. So if you are here and just
James is
watching,
here, and
just
Alberto
give us
is
a
here.
shout. Roberto, James, great to see both of y'all. All right.
Yay.
It
The,
seems to
the
be
stream
more a little
seems
bit
to
more
be.
stable here, Kristen. We might want to try and do this again.
You can go if you need to go.
All righty. And we're back. Welcome to Print Your Games podcast about what's new and awesome in 3D printing for gaming. I'm with your host Jefferson J. Thacker, and I'm also joined by.
Kirsten Sowers, also known as Seventh Mastery.
And we have just gotten back from the best 4 days in gaming,
And
Gen Con.
it did not disappoint this year, folks. It was insane.
It hit
Good.
different this year, but not
Yeah.
disappoint. It sure hit different.
Yeah. It was full speed. Certainly the biggest thing I've been to since the 50th year celebration.
The last couple of years have been kind of, we're slowly coming back after COVID, and it's building up, and not very many people are here. And like giant empty walkways between booths a little farther apart than you expect them to be.
Gosh, I kind of wish I'd seen that, because that was not the case this year. It was full back to got 6 board game backpacks smacking me in the side and face, and I can't even imagine.
It's the hazing you have to do to get to Alpha New Gamer. It's just get absolutely berated through Gen Con by the way overstuffed bags that people decide is a good idea to bring into a place that is shoulder to shoulder occupancy.
And I understand they probably went in there with empty bags, but yeah, once those puppies get full, maybe like go to the side of the vendor hall and like demurely scoot your butt out the door.
I don't know how. I'm kind of like super torn, and like, because like there is stratification in Gen Con attendee. That in like the best way to attend Gen Con is to attend Gen Con with a connecting hotel, so that you can just freely drop off and grab your bag in 5 minutes notice right before your game. But there's not enough of those hotel rooms for everybody, and fighting for those hotel rooms is unfortunately very fierce. And as more and more people
Weston
go to the con,
and Marriott, right, specifically, were like really.
Oh yeah, the and like the Crown Plaza is always a tough one to get. And then there's the ones that are like the double connecting suites that can have like 8 people share a room. So even though they cost a fortune, it's like really cheap per person, and those always get snapped up. Like even like oftentimes like you'll get a crew of 3 or 4 sharing a single king bed room, because it's just like that's all you can get.
Well, that sounds familiar.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and it's just crazy, and the more people that show up, the worse this gets. So, and if you aren't lucky enough to get one of those connected hotels that you can just like freely drop in and out of, and they are not cheap, though those prices are very expensive. It's a significant investment. Usually the flight and the hotel are the 2 expensive parts of Gen Con. The tickets and this money you spend at the convention are secondary to that. And so for the people that are like coming in from like the airport hotels that have to shuttle in the morning, I understand why they might have the bag full of like all the
I suppose
RPGs I'm going to play today and the board games I'm going to run, and it's not easy to just leave those behind.
So I'm gonna counter something.
What's that?
You might have a friend at one of those hotels, so you could always like buddy up. I know that it's not going to happen for everybody, but yeah, a bag check, though, being incredibly difficult to manage, would be lovely. I'm sure it's never going to happen, though.
They used to have bag checks, and they haven't had them the last few years, and that is a liability nightmare. Bag checking is a liability nightmare, and
I'm sure.
I understand why they won't want to do it. Ultimately, like lockers would be great, but the few times I've seen them try the locker methods, the lockers get sold out within 0.2 milliseconds. And good luck. So the giant bags smacking me in the face are an unfortunate side effect of Gen Con.
Yeah, I'm a pretty big guy. It's more the little kids and the people in wheelchairs that upsets me. That it's hitting those folks.
I did notice that this year there was a lot less wheelchair accommodating than I'm used to seeing. Because usually,
Mm-hmm.
like, if somebody in a wheelchair comes up, like the path before them parts like the sea before Moses, and they are able to freely move throughout the convention a little bit easier. And this year, I saw people not moving, so that
Yeah, it was a little rough on that.
yeah, that was a little rough. But also, this was the absolute tightest we've been packed in there. This
Mm-hmm.
is the record-breaking year at over 70,000 attendees is the official number as of this
I
morning.
thought I saw 80, 85.
Yeah, that number was floating around, but according to Peter Adkinson,
Okay. I'm going to
Peter
trust that.
Adkinson himself,
Yep.
the official number is over 70. Technically, 85 would be over 70, but if they had over 85, I think they would be trumping. We are reaching the limit that the fire marshals will allow attendance because they officially went, we are sold out. We are sold out, and we are not selling any more tickets for the 4-day tickets, and Saturday specifically are what sold out.
Mm-hmm.
Evidently, there were still Sunday tickets. But evidently, the Sunday will call line stretched around the building.
It did.
And
Actually, I saw that physically.
I'm not used to the Sunday will call line
never
being a thing.
Like Sunday, everybody usually thinks it's over, but people were still trying to get everything. Even the game demos, because I didn't get into Dragon Bane until Sunday morning, and it still had a line. If I hadn't gone an hour early and just sat there in front of the door, I wouldn't have got in.
Right. And also, we can't talk about lines at Gen Con without talking about the worst disaster at Gen Con.
Lorcana, my new nemesis.
I mean, if you are a Lorcana fan, this is not an indictment of the quality of that.
I'm sure the game's fantastic. The designer seemed really proud of its performance during it, and I had a brief chance to talk to him. But
so every Gen Con has that breakout game, that game that everybody's talking about, everybody's trying to get in line for. The launch of Pathfinder, launch of the Pathfinder card game, Keyforge, relaunch of Marvel Versus, and now we can add Lorcana to the mix of this. Also, anything to do with Kingdom Death Monster. Like there's like these huge lines. The Lorcana,
that was a whole new level.
They were not prepared to deal with this and not able to deal with this. The first day, so basically at the height of everything, people were lining up literally at 3 a.m. before the convention to get into Lorcana, and the line was 16 to 18 hours long.
Yeah, I'm not sure, James, if they sorted that legal situation or not.
What legal situation?
There was a legal issue with the Lorcana, but since we don't know, I don't want to speak to it.
Okay, yeah, I'm not well informed on that. We do know fire marshals were called in on Lorcana specifically.
Well, and I will say that the normally you have maybe occasional stanchions dividing stuff at Gen Con, but there was a complete segregation of flow of traffic because the Lorcana line was running right down the middle everywhere.
Yeah, so like on the day one, like it actually made me very angry because like the Lorcana line was so mismanaged that it was just blocking like 3 main arteries to Gen Con. And so to understand this, like this giant mass of people wrapping around the building and like switchbacking a billion times first, like 18 hours of waiting in line to buy a card game. I'm sure like
That
no
will be
indictment
at
on the
Target
quality
in a
of this
couple
card
weeks.
game. It could be the best card game ever. I don't know. I assume it better off should be, because if you waited in that line and sacrificed your entire Gen Con to get Mickey Mouse the CCG, you better really love that game and it better be awesome. But that meant that like everybody else at the convention was being massively impacted. It was so hard to get around that because of these giant Lorcana lines. And they were just like being cavalier about it. Like they didn't care that they were blocking the arteries.
Yeah, bless your soul if you had to cross the aisle to the other side.
Yeah,
it was...
I forced my way through once, and I think I got death stares.
And
it was just like, listen, people, you're not. So how this is supposed to work is when you have a line that's so long that it has to cross the main pathways, you're supposed to break the line
and have signs joining it.
Yeah, and then like let people move on and move like you're supposed to leave that pathway clear, and you have people managing those breaks. You're not supposed to just let the line glom up and block it.
Well,
Now,
and the
eventually
weird
that
thing,
got corrected, but it took the literal
yeah,
fire marshal showing up to get them to get their line in order.
it's weird to me because the staff, the volunteers, and the staff at Gen Con know how to do it already. They do it the will call line, and it works fine.
As I understand it, Lorcana did not plan on having a line at all, and then, or plan on managing a line.
So they
at
just
all.
put that back on the Gen Con people.
So they put it back on just the fans to organize themselves.
Yikes!
And you can't do that.
No.
When this happens, and I'm also really like, Gen Con needed to have stepped in there a lot faster than they did, because usually when this happens, Gen Con is on it, and they get there and they say, you got to get your line in thing or we're going to shut your booth down.
Right.
And that didn't happen this year. Eventually by day 2, like I said, the literal fire marshal had to come in and tell them that they were going to empty the hall if they didn't get this in order. That would have meant every single person kicked out of Gen Con and then let back in slowly, which would have been massive.
A bummer. Yeah.
I've seen that happen at some conventions before, and it is a sign of organizational failure. But they got that stuff in line. So hey, if you got a hold of Lorcana, great. I hope you didn't have to give up your entire Gen Con to get a box.
Yeah, and I hope it was really good. I know people are turning those boxes for $600 on their $150 boxes, but
they're down to $300 now.
Oh, they've dropped already?
Yeah, that stuff drops off. It's almost never worth it, because only the first few people get like those really huge payouts on these con exclusives, and then the value just drops like crazy. Like I know, like there were the first couple of the Mickey Mouse promos selling for like $1,400, and then like now they're like $60. And like the game is going to come out in 2 weeks soon into your friendly local gaming store, and then it's going to be like retail everywhere, a little above retail. Like y'all can wait, or like don't overpay for Lorcana. Would be my advice. Like if you were really hype about this game, maybe don't get a $600 booster box off eBay.
Right.
But what did we end up doing at the conventions? Because we were super hyped for getting together at Gen Con.
Very much.
I would have to say like most of my Gen Con was like all of my cons, and it's like mostly just hanging out with my peeps is the big thing I did at the convention. There's like a lot of hanging out with you, a lot of hanging out with the ex Paizo crew and old KD friends.
Yeah.
And that sort of thing. So that was good and fun. And what about you?
I mean, we both did Tales of the Valiant, which
yes, the new Tales of the Valiant,
which really excites me. It's got everything you like from 5e plus a couple quality of life adjustments. For instance, True Strike as a bonus action, which is fantastic. But yeah, then I think I was a little more aggressive about finding us some new friends for this show. So I think we tracked down quite a few people. I think we will probably, obviously these could fall through. So I'm not going to promise all of them, but might be seeing Creature Caster here on the show soon, which I'm super excited by.
Yeah.
Might be seeing their allied paint formulation people too, to talk about paint adherence to resin and stuff, and formulating stuff for resin. What was your question? You had a question.
I was just saying, let's not spoil things until we have confirmations.
Okay.
We need confirmations.
Let's just say there's other things, maybe some cosplay things, which we won't specify specifically.
Yeah. We were surprised at the number of people wanting to be on the show, which was great, which was absolutely wonderful. So, hey, more content coming y'all's way.
Yes, good stuff. I would guess I won't get any more specific than that, just in case people fall through.
Yeah, we don't want to disappoint y'all. That's the most important thing.
I'm pretty confident about Creature Caster though, so I'll say it.
Yeah.
Anyway, we'll see. I got to do some fun stuff with my TikTok friends. I met up with, I thought almost all of them. No, I missed like 12 that were there at least.
That's always the way. It's like you get to meet so many people, and then like there's always that that group of friends that you wish you could have gotten together with, but like the stars would not align. And sometimes it's super easy. But like, have to understand that there's 70,000 people in this nerd space crammed in and super busy with their own schedules.
Well, and then a whole orbit of coolness at the hotels. Like almost all the hotels have side events, and or like there's the writers conference that's going on. Sometimes a company will do all their demo space in another location. Just a lot of different orbital coolnesses. So like, even when you're going back to your hotel, you might run into something amazing, right? So, but frequently I would run into people on the street and be like, "Oh, it's you from there," and we'd talk. Be like somebody who worked on my Kickstarter, for instance, I ran into in the street. Just a bunch of people. That whole team's definitely re-engaged, maybe in some work, but we'll talk about that at a later date. But lots of fun scheming and planning. And then I did play games. I did get to try Dragon Bane. I mentioned that, which is fantastic. I did not realize it had DNA in common with RuneQuest.
Really?
Are you familiar with RuneQuest at all?
I am familiar with RuneQuest. Yes.
So, like, RuneQuest was basically Chaosium's D&D answer. Kind of as they were doing Call of Cthulhu stuff. They also did RuneQuest, and one of the things they had was a little splat book called Solo Quest. And in Solo Quest, your main character was a Mallardkin. He was a duck dude. And of course, like, I don't know if it was deliberate to like reach out to children or not, but freaking adorable, right? Like it's basically Daffy Duck or Donald Duck, and it literally has a species specific power to rage, to quack out and freak out and lose control of yourself, like so many of those duck characters do. So the mad cartoon duck guy is a playable species. And when the guy he went back to I want to say it was Switzerland the game is centered in. I could be wrong though. But anyway, he went back to Europe, and when he got there, he's like, well, we don't have D&D here, and I really want to play it. But he talked to Chaosium because he'd done some work with them, and they said, hey, you can use our system. So he made the first version of Dragonbane off of RuneQuest. And so the Dragonbane like OG fans expect the duck people. And so here I am like walking to Dragonbane. It's all cool. There's big dragon. There's all this stuff. And then I look over and there's like Darkwing Duck basically as a dual wield ranger barbarian or something. Yes. And he's like, raw. And I'm like,
I mean, it has such a cool cover with that the Mallardkin coming down. I had to like double check like 15 times. I'm like, is this a Warner Brothers tie-in thing?
Right,
is this like Space Jam but for D&D? And
totally. But yeah, so it's a tie-in to that old RuneQuest. And I played RuneQuest during the Panic because you couldn't play D&D during the Panic.
Right.
But
they knew enough to tell the difference between D&D and RuneQuest. They would know that D&D wasn't a problem.
Yep, I just would say, oh, I'm playing RuneQuest now, Mom. It's fine. Anyway. Yeah, so it was weird for me to kind of have this surprise nostalgia. And the systems, it's really solid. It's very simple, very clean. Definitely uses minis. It is very wargamey miniature in the battle, right? Like in the combat piece. It's all meters. So if you're a metric fan, that was interesting.
Because usually even the European games and the Asian games use feet.
Right.
Imperial measurements.
Yeah, so they do
only not weird over here because we use it in America, but we're the only ones.
Right, but they use 2 meter squares, so they're 6 feet, kind of. And your movement is in meters, so you have to half your movement to get your squares, which I thought was a little clunky. But other than that, everything else was super slick. Like, it's all roll against your own difficulty check to see if you succeed. And then you have to spend your action to defend. So you get no AC, you get no defenses unless you take an action to block. That was wild. Combat got really dangerous and really like, unless you saved that action to tank, basically, you just took it to the face. Yeah. Okay, I've been corrected. Closer to 7 feet. Yeah. Thank you. I apologize for my lingering Imperial data in my brain. So
that kind of that a lot of people need to appreciate things like RuneQuest and Record of Lodoss War and the Dark Eye, which is like, see, in the used to before times when D&D was first coming out, you couldn't just publish something and it be simultaneously distributed instantly around the world
Right.
in digital
Right.
perfect format. And also, like, I guess, language barriers are also a thing, and translation is still a problem. But
Right.
like a whole generations of games exist in various pockets of the world that got very popular because D&D, great idea. We would like D&D at home, but we can't get it because of billions of different reasons: import bans, import top problems,
Mhm.
translation issues. And so there's all these games that are, this is the D&D of Germany, this is the
Yeah.
D&D of Japan, this is the D&D of, and that's how you get a lot of these really fun systems that later have their own heritage and growth and
Mhm.
and wonderfulness, that I think needs to be more appreciated. And there's definitely some innovation there, that is worth paying attention to, that often just gets overlooked because D&D is still the titan it is, and
Yeah. Yeah.
even the games that rival D&D have direct lineage with D&D. Like, I'm a humongous Pathfinder fan, but you can't deny Pathfinder's connection as basically a scion of Dungeons and Dragons.
You might even have told the creator or CEO of it once at a convention that it was the same game and got in trouble. And by
Uh,
you, I mean me.
I mean, you're not the only one.
Yeah.
That's the reason I
But
knew
they
what
sure
that
didn't
response
like
was.
that.
No. Oh
Other
gosh,
things though that sorry, go ahead.
I have also had a similar situation where I call Pathfinder a version of D&D, and
Hopefully not on your podcast, did you?
oh, I've
Your
said it,
other one?
several times.
Oh no. I mean I guess that, I mean it's still accurate, but the other
Right.
thing I thought was really cool to see was a pretty large number of vendors using 3D printed stuff for
Oh,
sale,
so much. Yeah.
and some fantastic quality. Like we actually had to ask a couple of the vendors we talked to what they were doing, and we
Mm-hmm.
saw like high end Crealities, we saw high end Form Labs results,
Mm-hmm.
just some of these big printers we were talking about, those Cadillac and beyond, yacht weekend
Mm-hmm.
purchasing big old
Yeah.
printers. But the results were fantastic.
It
I even
was
saw some,
really
yeah.
hard to tell a lot of times if you were buying something that was 3D printed or if you were buying something that wasn't
Hmm.
3D printed. Like, was this traditional manufacturing? Like that little dice dragon I bought, later found out was fully 3D printed, but I have scoured that thing for layer lines, and the
Hmm.
only way evidence that anything was 3D printed is a tiny little bit of support material is underneath its little back paw. And I
Hmm.
was say that I have, and I noticed that I'm like, okay, yeah, this was absolutely 3D printed in clear resin, but at such a high quality, you cannot tell that it was. If I hadn't found the support material, I would still be guessing whether or not it was.
Right. And I did play that game a lot. I'd go up, and especially a lot of the board games that were
Mm-hmm.
prototyping,
Mm-hmm.
I'd be like, was this 3D printed or was it COcast, or was this? And
Mm-hmm.
I was usually right, but I was
Mm-hmm.
wrong a couple times, and I was a little surprised, like where I was like,
Mm-hmm.
wow, I swore that was, injection molded,
Mm-hmm.
but it was 3D printed.
Yeah.
Um, you know, Eldritch Foundry has a
Oh
formula
my
of their own
gosh.
special resin, and they print on a really high end printer. And
Yeah.
I will say, I love those minis, and I will be happy to print them on my own printer. But their prints were gorgeous.
I know. That was like, I mean, I've been at it with like high end zooms on my macro lenses, just like, and then, like, it's hard to tell that anything there was three. You only on the bottom of the bases where you can see some like heavier supports were placed is there evidence of 3D printing on those Eldritch Foundry models. So when we
Hmm.
played the demo for Tales of the Valiant, we were surprised that we were given a Eldritch Foundry version print of our character.
We got to
um
keep them. Yeah.
yeah, and also these were, it turns out these were bespoke sculpts, because I was like, these don't look like they were made in Eldritch Foundry or any creator. They look like they were bespoke sculpts. It turns out they were.
But they
But
were bespoke sculpt pieces for Tales of the Valiant that are now added to the asset packs, from what I
yes,
understand.
yes. um and they were just glorious quality, like super sharp
That
details,
dwarf with his
super
little lizard
clean,
guy. Oh my
no
gosh.
visible layer lines at all. like it looked like some of the best purchased resin minis that I have ever purchased, kind of situation. And they just gave them to us. They're like, keep it
Yep.
at the end of
Yep.
the demo. Goodness, like we live in a wonderful time.
No joke. No joke. They were fantastic. And I think I actually ended up getting the third one. You've lost sound, Perram, just in case you can't hear me. Do you hear me? I do not know what no sound from Perram at all. Maybe are the viewers getting the sound in the live in the chat? Because I only hear myself. I don't know what's going on. But yeah, that booth was super duper impressive. Like every bit as impressive. I went down, to Creature Casters around the next, and they were using 3D printed stuff and resin cast stuff. Yeah, no Perram still. I'm not sure what's up.
Can you hear me now?
But those were fantastic. Both, Creature Caster was using about half. You're hearing both? Okay, James is hearing both. But
Hey, can you hear me now?
Keep talking, Perram.
I can hear you fine now.
Okay, I think we might be good. I'm going to reset my audio because I think whatever you did to fix your audio messed my audio up. Just a second.
Indeed. So sorry, gang, about that small little hiccup. But I wasn't able to hear what Kristen was saying. I've got a bad audio cable here that I need to replace desperately. But it broke right before the show, so I'm kind of screwed.
No, we're good. We're good.
And
sorry about that.
Yeah. So the quality was just absolutely fantabulous, and the fact that like the cost of printing must be so low that they're literally able to just give those things away,
right?
As like, because we didn't pay much for that demo. I think it was like your standard like $8 ticket.
Yeah, it was either 4 or 8. It was definitely cheap.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly, I think you paid more than that if you bought the minis from the booth. Honestly,
how much were the minis at the booth?
Depended on the mini, I think, because they actually did have some that were a little bit more complicated. I think one was mounted.
Yeah, there's one like on a jet bike.
Yeah, really cool. and there was that also the jetpack guy. They had one of those, but I think those were sold out on the first day. They added a bunch of new flight poses, by the way, if you use them for any of your 3D printing stuff, and those are pretty amazing. So,
right. And like also like the big pitch Eldritch Foundry is doing is like if you sign up for their $5 or $10 a month, whatever it is. You just get as many downloads as you want. You don't just get 10.
Yeah.
Just saying, for some really odd specific reason, the number 10.
For some strange Forge of Heroes sort of reference.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, but it's interesting, too, because I was noodling around with it. I went back one more time on Sunday because I couldn't stay away. And I was like, you could easily make an OPR fantasy army just by changing heads and stuff and just popping those little downloads, just going. Got that unlimited. I'll tell you, all my Patreons, well, not all my Patreons, a Patreon, I don't know which one it's going to be, is in danger because I think it's changing into. So,
none of the ones that are tentacle focused are in danger.
It's true. Although if I have my way, Eldritch Foundry might have tentacles eventually. We
saw a lot of people there that were vendor, like 3D printing merchant license crews. That like their whole thing is just getting merchant license and printing models and selling them. And there were like 3 or 4 different booths there at the con, and some of the booths at fairly high production values that it was not obvious at first that is exactly what they were.
Honestly, if I had known Lord of the Print sculpts, that one big booth, I would have been like, I would have had no idea. I just would have thought they were like hawking injection molds or something.
Yeah, I thought it wasn't until I saw Wyatt from Cast and Play, and only then because I painted Wyatt several times now, and I'm very familiar with that werewolf. That I was like, oh, okay, yeah, this is a booth of resellers.
Yeah, it was that Lord of the Print Black Dragon for me. I was like, these are all licensed. And I started looking closer, and I was like, yep.
And also, like, we're definitely noticing that good printers are available more often because all the booths that had printed stuff looked great. And speaking of stuff that looked great, Privateer Press booth, I of course went to go check out their stuff because all the new War Machine stuff is 3D printed, even though they don't sell the files.
You have just stabbed me in the heart, sir. I just realized I didn't go to Privateer Press's booth once, and I really wanted to. What is wrong with me?
So I got out my little magnifier and I looked at those minis, and they are perfect. Like, there's no visible layer lines. There's none of that mess from last year that caused such of a drama. These look absolutely glorious, perfect prints, and it's no surprise. Like right now, like I've got I haven't even. It's sitting in my print room is a boxed Saturn 3 Ultra, and so like, and even then the Saturn 2 was already sub 35 microns. We're in the, you know, 3D
Limits.
printed at or better quality than injection molding level. Of course, the quality of these minis are going to be 1,000 times better.
Right. Well, we're entering limits of the human eye soon. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Like I said, I had to get magnification out to like. You have no chance of seeing these. Like if people like pick up, like if you've got a good printer and you've got your setters dialed in, and some like, you know, miniature GW snob picks up your models and goes, I can't stand layer lines, and looks up, they lying. You can't see the lines anymore.
Yeah. Even actually a couple FDM sellers. There was a couple people doing FDM dungeon prints that were fantastic.
Yeah.
And I was
Dice towers. I wanted one of them dice towers.
Yeah, I was looking at those the modular dungeon where they were mostly selling their accessory sets, the resin resin printed accessory sets, but they had FDM prints that I was like, is that Dwarven Forge? Are they reset? Like Dwarven Forge is their booth. I can see it from here. And this looks like, oh no, it's not Dwarven Forge, because I finally got on the side and I was like, oh, they're layer lines, but they are subtle as hell.
Yeah, I think they were using the tactile sets
Maybe
for the Wylock ones that with the 1.25 inch tiles.
Okay. Yeah, it looked fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
And then of course their little accessory packs were pushing it over quite a bit. I mean, I would say they were a little bit better than like the accessories you would get out of like the Pathfinder pre-paint boxes when you get like the random accessory in it.
Right. It was interesting seeing the different strategies people were taking, because you had some that were just like, this is very obviously a naked 3D prints, pimples and all, but being sold on the cheap. You just grab that there. You had that one booth we were talking about that was just like, you could not tell that this was not in like professionally molded and packaged at all, and like only by recognizing the sculpts did we even know that it was merchant licensed stuff. And then like the one you're talking about, with all the hand painted stuff, they like not selling unpainted at all. Like their stick was they paint the stuff and sell the painted models.
Right, and that was their value add. Yeah. And even like I was saying with Creature Caster, I think you didn't quite catch this because it was when your audio was a little glitched. That they had printed and resin like cast stuff on the same displays, and I had to like a couple times I had to ask. It's like, that's a resin one, right? And sometimes the only way I could tell is I knew it wasn't available as an STL. I was like, okay, this is not in your STL store. That's cast, right? And they're like, yeah. But there was a couple of their older models that were still 3D printed and just looked fantastic.
It's going to be almost impossible in the next couple of years to tell the difference. And I expect like we're going to keep seeing 3D printers designed for manufacturing coming out, like not hobbyist line, not high end for doctors line, but for mass production focused 3D printers. Because now that we have these ultra fast, like why do you think everybody's invested in ACF ultra fast printing? It's not so the hobbyist can cut the time on a plate full of orcs from 5 hours down to 2. That's not there's no business model.
The person who has a shed out back with 20 of those machines running it can crank out those boxes of orders faster.
Yeah, it's so that the next privateer press can just like absolutely smash 300,000 War Machine models in a weekend. You know, that's what this is about.
Yeah, it is interesting because like that distributed fabrication is gonna become a very viable channel. It is already to us, right? But to like common availability, it's going to become more and more normal, I think.
Right. And the other thing that we're going to need to see on the market to make this successful is resins designed for gameplay, because right now there's not a lot of good resins for gamers out there, because the resins are either for sculpting level stuff, get as much like these, what they call these 8K, these 12K, these super high precision resins that capturing the ultimate pinnacle of detail for showing off in pictures. And absolutely brittle that if you just nudge it, they'll shatter. They're not great for gameplay. And then you have like the ABS likes are kind of like trying to toe that line, but they're not quite there yet.
Right.
And then like the actual stuff that's doing great is like these custom blends that we're having to put together where we just like we take a good ABS like and then we're throwing in tenacious or some
Tenacious
other
or some other additive,
to make it like that. Like and I've seen some like evidently the magic number for Sierra Tech Gray now, which I've got from some friends that have told me, and I've seen the results, is 20% tenacious to Soraya Tech Fast Navy Gray. So
oddly enough, you can also do a probably 40-60 mix of their clear. Their clear color resins are almost as good as tenacious with gray. Like I was surprised. I did that breakdown and it was really, really good.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is about the way they interact, but it's really solid.
But what we need is like a pre-mixed. Like this is
absolutely
the stuff for wargamers. This is the good stuff. No measuring out stuff and like I don't need to get 200 milliliters of tenacious in the cup and then pour it into the bottle and shaky.
Are you that specific? I just put a little bit out into the print puddle, and then I just like, okay, it's got to be about that, and I just eyeball it.
Interesting choice from here. From Blasted Camouflage would say that most minis on the market aren't even designed for printing, let alone playing. There is some truth to the fact that a lot of models are designed to look impressive in screenshots so that you sell the renders for people that just buy the files and never actually end up printing them. That is true. That said, it's what Atlas Support Solutions can do is kind of magic sometimes.
Sometimes all the tentacles print. I'm just saying.
Yes. Oh, hold that up while I throw you up.
Sure. It's not my best paint job, but it's getting there.
He's got cool blends. He's got so many color blends.
Yeah, he's a fun boy.
For our audio listeners, he is holding up one of the Venom floaters from OPR.
Yes,
with lots of wiggly tentacles
and poison sacs,
to pink, and
it's got a little purple on it. Yeah. Anyway,
but you can print. The cool thing about 3D printing is you can print these crazy quality minis that should not be possible.
Right. Absolutely. Like the supports are magic.
So the other big thing we got to do is like, hey, we are both interested in what comes next in the D&D-ish space. So Tales of the Valiant is obviously one we've got our eyes on.
Which was super fun.
Cobalt Press is great. A lot of our friends are working on that. So like, hey, there's some personal investment there. And
Wizards was at the con and they did release sorry, I can't say this without laughing. The Big Beast Giant book.
What's up?
You haven't heard?
Going on. No,
you haven't heard. It's been revealed that there is AI generated art in it.
We'll avoid that particular can of fish until we have more.
Yes, I'm just saying. You can Google it. Google it if you like. But it was an eventful situation in the upcoming forefront of D&D. Although I have to say, a book of many things does look interesting. Jason Tondro from former Paizo person again, right? Worked on it and it does look pretty good. So I will say that.
Yeah. But we played Tales of Valiant and there's no giant AI controversy surrounding Tales of the Valiant.
No, there is not. And that design team is solid. I'm super excited to see the changes that they're making there. And there's also just a lot of other contenders. Dragonbane, that demo line was hopping. It was 10 games a day, probably hundreds of people. And then they had full length games too. And it was really solid. So
is Dragonbane aiming for that market? I thought it was trying to just do its own thing with cool deck people.
Timing is suspicious, sir. Coming out right at this edition change, coming out with a major, very D&D. I will say, if you have a group that's half OSR grognards that want that old edition feel, and a group that's half 5e players that are willing to experiment, that game is right in that sweet spot between them. and it's really easy to learn if you know 5e. So, yeah. Other than that, though, there was definitely a lot of like third-party support for just 5e and just staying with 5e. I talked to Paradigm Concepts, and they said, nope, we don't even care about, one D&D 5.5 revised, whatever the heck it's going to be. But they did say that they are going to continue to create product for their popular Arcanist setting, if you're familiar with it. It's got an organized places system. It's got a huge world, big sweeping campaign books, on par with any, like Paizo's offerings. It's not quite as many as it is for second edition right now, but it's a lot. It's a very well developed third party, really flavorful world if you haven't checked it out. And they're sticking. And they weren't the only people that told me that. There was a lot of third-party people who are like, we're just going to keep making stuff for 5e because we figure there's going to be a lot of people who just don't want to buy the books again, right? So, trying to think if there's any of the other major contenders. Did find out that Daggerheart is not D20 for Critical Role. It's going to be a 2D12 engine system.
Okay.
Still sort of sounded, still success, target success situation with the dice. And it's 2D12 is a very similar range. So maybe, I don't know how different it's going to be, but it will not be compatible with 5e at all, which I don't know if that was a smart move, but we'll see. Maybe it'll be amazing.
So what did you think of Tales of the Valiant, Kristen?
I am in love. There was a very magical moment when 3.5 turned into 4e, and some of us weren't very happy about it. And then suddenly Pathfinder showed up.
Right.
And there's a very magical moment happening right now, I think, between Wizards making, we'll say, interesting decisions. We won't get into any of that controversy or kerfuffle, but the proliferation of other options. I think you're going to see a Goldilocks situation where that porridge is going to work perfectly with your old stuff. It's going to work perfectly probably with the new stuff. And it's going to offer a whole window into a new thing. And one of my biggest gripes with any RPG is not offering world support, not offering genres. And if you are not aware, the Tales of the Valiant Kickstarter, one of the backer levels was give us your campaign setting and we will canonize it. So there are 70 worlds from players submitted, I think, that got picked. They're going to be in a PDF you download, but they are now acknowledged by Kobold Press as these worlds actually exist, and you can go from one of them to another. So they are in my wheelhouse of let's connect all the dots, let's play with all the stuff, let's have some Knights of Solamnia fighting beside purple dragon knights and have like a big adventure in Eberron, like they're there for that. And I think that's amazing because people should have options. People should be able to like interact anything they want to. These games are about imagination and having fun. And I was talking to players and I've been gathering stuff. When I hit 7,000 on TikTok, I'm going to be running a whole bunch of one shots. And these are the characters I'm getting given to me. Like these are like oozlings, those minis that Dragon Trappers did for oozes. Someone's totally got that character. It's an oozling rogue. And I'm like, oh, that's awesome. But like, most normal games in most normal, Paizo or Wizard settings, unless you're playing Spelljammer, don't encourage that kind of play. And Tales of the Valiant is going to, which I think is amazing.
Yeah, I'm definitely glad for a lot of the meta around Tales of the Valiant, but I'm more excited to see how this thing actually plays on the table because a lot of the conversation about Tales seems to be about it's opening up this and it's connecting that and it's providing a good alternative. I can't play a cause. Like I can support causes, but I can't roll a d20 with a cause. I need that. This game has to actually be a good game.
But you can have persistent divine damage on your cleric's attacks.
See, that's good and very good. You can have true strikes.
You can have the ability to automatically leave people out of your AoEs as a wizard.
Yes.
From low level.
Right.
Yeah. Which is amazing.
And you can have the cool Viking girl I played as the fighter being a gigantic dervish of death, like throwing like weird freaking combos and counterattacks.
Yeah, that dual wield build was awesome. And then the Ranger's Mark just being automatic when you hit a dude. It just goes. You don't have to bonus action or any of that. Just a lot of little quality of life things. One of my friends on TikTok was like, "Hey, is it really going to be worth it? Is it really going to be worth it?" And I said, "It's a whole bunch of a little thing." And I said, "There's probably going to be like a 10-page PDF listing every little tiny change of the major things, right? But that's still going to be obnoxious to go through. Why not just learn the core, the new core, right?" I think anyway. Blasted Samaflange just asked, "Have any good sci-fi games coming out in Gen Con?"
Nothing really pinged me while I was there.
Nothing new to me. There was a lot of expansions for stuff that I saw.
The Eclipse Phase was there with their new books, and that's always fun. Like, it's got a lot of cool transhumanism elements to it, and it's like it can also do like existential horror very well if you want to like dive down the philosophical rabbit hole of what it is to be a person. Eclipse Phase is definitely one of the games to check out for that. Traveler is showing off their new stuff, but most of that came out last year. They got a bunch of cool new books for it this year. And like Starfinder 2 got announced, and that's big news, but nothing really. But that's kind of it. Like on the sci-fi space.
Yeah, there was a couple collections I saw, like that were like, here's the updated, master version or whatever, and the new Savage World thing is going on too.
Right, but that's mostly just it's a new printing of a book that exists. It's like,
right. Although I do hear that it's not fully compatible with the old version, which I think is interesting.
That is super weird. Savage Worlds does some, like, it's one of my favorite games, but it's often very confusing to understand which book you should buy.
Right, because each set's just kind of meant to work in that generation, right, of stuff. Like, and was it like the master set or something that just came out? I'm trying to remember. It was like a couple years ago.
They keep reusing covers sometimes, and you're just like, which one is this?
Fair enough. That is very fair. You're making me paranoid about reusing cover art from my books, which I haven't done yet, but I was considering.
I need to tell, like, just no joke. If you're a game designer, if I can't tell at a glance what I'm buying, you got a problem.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
I mean, like, poor Pathfinder 2 had to like put a gigantic second edition thing in the cover just so people understood which version of the game it was buying for the longest time.
Yeah, though the new logo to me is really distinct, but I could understand that people who weren't really familiar with the line wouldn't have seen that right away.
Honestly, 5e was really brilliant with its cover treatments. Because when you walk into a Barnes & Noble, you can spot the D&D 5th edition section from a mile away.
Yeah, because that's just that red line floating on all those black spines.
Yeah, so there is something brilliant about a well-executed brand code.
Interestingly enough, the LGSs that have lots of the special covers, they don't look that way. They actually look really like weirdly dissonant because they're all so bespoke and unique, each of them, that they don't look like they belong. Like, me. Even before I was regularly playing 5e, I started kind of getting some of those collectors because the art was cool, and I supported a lot of the creators that were involved in writing them. And now I look up on my 5e shelf, and it's like red, cacophony of madness.
Here's the fun thing. This is why it matters, and what you brought up here, and this is some inside baseball crap I'm about to lay down on you. Those are very intentional choices too, because Barnes & Noble is not going to cover out those glorious special edition shiny awesomeness.
Sure.
They're going to spine out all of those. And spine out, it will just blend into the whole section of fantasy if they just did those covers. So by having that lockstep on the common core covers, it means that by not standing out, they stand out brighter than anybody.
It's true, and honestly, it's very satisfying. Even though I have newer books that are common covers, I still keep them with the oldest ones because that block of red and black looks great on my shelf. So,
and we're on the flip side at the local gaming store. Somebody coming into a local gaming store doesn't need that extra bit of nudge, and they know what they're looking for. They know what this thing is. Whereas the Barnes & Noble crowd is not going to be dedicated. Not necessarily going to all be like dedicated D&D grognards and at the gaming shelf where you need to stand out, because the gaming shelf's going to put those cover out where the covers themselves have to fight. And so all those really cool looking, shiny, awesome art covers are the ones that need to compete in that space.
100%. Let's see what else. I did do a couple, non-miniature related things. Oh, we played Onslaught though. Did you play Onslaught?
Nope.
So Onslaught looks very much like, you remember the old, not Dragon Strike or Dragon Flight, the old miniatures battle game.
Yes, the Dungeons and Dragons collectible miniatures battle game.
I guess that's what it was called, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that, this is like that, but cleaned up. If that and HeroClix had a baby with 5e, so it's got a little character card that has dials on it, very much like HeroClix. It felt very HeroClicky to me. Okay. But there's a dial for your like core, like it's weird because your hit points go down and your AC can actually go up if you have the right class or whatever it is. Like it's strange how the spinners work because your AC, your hit points, and one other thing. Shoot, what was it? 3 of the core like static abilities that like you track your wounds just by spinning it, and it would change those other things. And then you had your they were supposed to be use of day abilities, but they clearly just made them cooldown abilities. So they, in that regard, they kind of felt like 4E to me a little bit. But those spinners would have like a use it once, use it twice, it's on cooldown, and then you would count back down on the rounds, right? And so it was kind of a neat little like dial-based MMO timer, kind of. But it is a very miniatures heavy game. And there are scenarios. I do believe they're talking about a license to write scenarios for Onslaught. So there's little like miniature, like little mini adventures basically for it. And because of the way it's set up, it wouldn't be hard to print more stuff for it and probably figure out how to make your own character sheets. I know there are paper crafters out in our community that could probably make the dials all cool and stuff, but you wouldn't have to do it. You could just like, track it with paper or whatever. But there's probably people in our community.
Printing a dial is not a very huge bar to entry here.
Right. Compared to the people who are rebuilding their hot ends and their motors by themselves. Yes, I'm sure you all could handle it just fine. But it did look like a fun little game. It's a little faster than D&D, obviously. We played our demo in about 45 minutes.
Very cool.
I just said, and I did non-miniatures thing, and I talked about a miniatures thing. But yes, I did play that Onslaught game, and I figured I should mention that because it was still miniature based. So anyway, and I LARPed a little.
You did the zombie LARP.
I did a zombie apocalypse LARP and played a very inappropriate character that we will not talk about anymore on this podcast.
Wonderful.
But it was fun.
I went ahead and checked out. So in the miniature space, GW was there, which the most important thing about GW's booth is they brought almost everything they have in print, period, was there, which is impressive. They had a gigantic Terminator, which was made out of latex and not 3D printed. And overall, a kind of boring booth, honestly. Like, there was lots of miniature displays and a cool thing where you could hold a bolter, and that was fun.
Yeah, but not as much as I expected. I did not see like dioramas really much.
Right. Yeah.
And I really expected a lot more of my Tyranid boys. Like, there was not a lot of biomass present.
Yeah, like over at the Bushido booth, they had like this really cool miniature display with like really gorgeous terrain and awesome little samurai miniatures painted up they were playing the demos on. And Modifius's booth was like really glorious, speaking of a company that supports 3D printing. And they had like these awesome little demo things of like Fallout and Elder Scrolls, and like the Elder Scrolls was like the opening of the first dungeon where you go to get the little dragon claw with all the skeletons on the steps. And so if you've played the video game, you're just like, I know exactly where this location is, and it looks exactly like it should in your head.
I only ever played Morrowind, and then I figured out that you could cast spells at the ground and cause them to become permanent. And then the game wasn't hard and it got boring, so I didn't.
Morrowind is like 3.5 of Elder Scrolls, where you just break it over your back, and the game is kind of like easy to manipulate into wonderfulness.
Yeah. My buddy plays ESO though, and he says it's much more challenging. So.
Oh yeah, ESO is fun. I do recommend playing it with a buddy. ESO is like a perfect 2-player RPG kind of situation.
That's cool.
Yeah. And Warcrow was there near the Infinity stuff with like really glorious little low dark fantasy looking models in a very complicated game. So if you like Infinity and that like super crunchy squad level action in your miniature combat, like you will be very happy with Warcrow.
I'm also just going to throw a quick shout out to checking the local game stores that are near your con. Mm-hmm. Was it Good Games, is I believe what it's called in Indiana? Good Games, yeah. Good Games Indianapolis. Was very near the con, and they had stuff on clearance that was full price at the con. So like,
do not expect to save money at Gen Con. Everything is super overpriced at Gen Con.
But Good Games did a great job of still kind of supporting the regular player during the situation, and I was happy to see that. Yeah. And they have plastic glue if you need it for broken minis that are plastic glueable.
Nicholas Henley, anything cool from Mantic? Mantic's booth was oddly tiny this year.
Mm-hmm.
They were showing off a lot of their board games, their newer board games that were coming out, and Hellboy had a good presence. But that was about it. It was super understated this year.
Honestly, I'm gonna say this. When I walked by it the first time, I thought it was a similarly named company, because I was like, that can't be Mantic, and it was. They just didn't have very much stuff.
Yeah, and almost nothing from Kings of War was there at all either.
Mm-hmm.
Like one of their bigger games.
Yeah.
So sorry there. There was a whole lot less wargaming presence at Gen Con overall than I'm used to. Like there weren't only TT Combat was there. There wasn't a ton of like wargaming focused terrain companies there. Like Monstrous wasn't even there. Artist Alley was huge, but that's not wargaming related. And like it was like this Gen Con had like wholly become the board game role playing game convention with like a dash of the other stuff. But like all the other stuff that I'm used to being at Gen Con at like a pretty decent level, the anime sections, the wargaming sections, and things like that, all of that was like super pushed back, and like D&D, especially like 5e compatible stuff, was like running that convention this year.
Yeah, I would say it was definitely like pretty overly balanced that way. Necro Modes was cool.
Yeah, Necro Modes was fun.
And I'm sure you could eventually like figure out a way to invert minis.
You should probably tell people what Necro Modes is.
Oh, Necro Modes is you take like Play-Doh basically, and you put it in a little plastic mold, and you make your little dude. And then, like, you beat it up when you're playing. You stab it through with its wound markers, and at the end, you're supposed to smash it when it dies, and you just get to, like, crush it. Yes, Araberto knows what it is, and it's intensely satisfying.
So Necro Molds is a skirmish battle game where you play with Play-Doh figures that are molded while you're playing it.
I'm sorry. I was just so excited to talk about.
You're in super Mantic mode. I appreciate it, which is ironic because Mantic was anything but this year.
Right. But yeah, it was very satisfying, and the sort of thing that would be very easy to 3D print. Because one of the things that you get when you get like item drops and stuff in Necromolds, you stick them on them, so they get equipped. So you could totally 3D print like your own custom bits if you wanted to do that.
You track wounds by putting like little red daggers into your models
through them. That was awesome.
Yeah,
very, very satisfying and tactile if you're that way.
Yeah. And the stats for all the models are on the back of the little like Necronomicon books that you use as the molds.
Mm-hmm.
It was all very clever. Very clever.
They had a new expansion too, if you're already familiar with the game. So totally should have existed in the 90s. Araberto says it's such a neat idea. It should have existed in the 90s. I totally agree. And I bet Blasted Samaflange, if you used some food spray, you could probably do like that no bake cookie recipe for chocolate. I don't know if you're familiar with it. You make like the little like no bake chocolate balls or the peanut butter balls. You could probably make your guys out of that, and then you could eat them, which would be amazing. You have lost sound again, Perram. Sad panda. I'm going to make sure it's not me. I don't know what's up. Boop, boop. I think we're just about wrapped up here, but hopefully he can rejoin us before the end of the end. But yeah, I'm sure you could do that non-bake cookie dough in those molds. Did you resurrect? Nope. Can everybody else hear Perram? Cable Gremlin. Yeah, Cable Gremlin. I don't normally do the end of show stuff, Perram, so I could try. Okay, I guess I'm going to try. That was Perram. Jefferson J. Thacker, also known as Perram. I am Christen, also known as Seventh Mastery. If you would like to support our podcast, you can find us on any platform that platforms are where podcasts are available. iTunes podcast thingy and Spotify and a whole bunch of others. You can also support us on our page, and I believe we're on various social media. Also, I am on the TikToks under Seventh Mastery as well. And I guess that's it for us for the week. I'm so sad that I'm alone doing this, but don't forget to use your screen protector.